Here is my Sculpey tutorial. I'm using Sculpey 3, 2-ounce package. The first step is to condition the clay by kneading it. That warms it up, it makes it more pliable and workable. And you'll see me using a variety of tools. They're all things I found around my studio. Most are not clay sculpting tools. Here I'm using scissors to kind of cut little petals into the clay. Started with sort of a cone-shaped piece of clay. So here I could call it done, but I'm actually going to go ahead and curl back all of the petals, kind of open it up. So you'll see me making just a lot of organic forms here, sort of plant forms or abstract forms. I'm really just kind of experimenting with the clay. Just want to show you some of the things that are possible. Use any kind of cylindrical object to roll it out if you need to. The paintbrush handle works well. Kind of thinning out the edges to give it sort of a roughly jagged look around the edges. And I'm using this is a screw to make the marks all around. Just kind of seeing what I could make with that. Sort of a flower form again, because that's what I like. Okay, next thing is a coil, like a rope of clay. I'm going to roll it up, like a cinnamon roll. And here I'm using a needle. It's a little bit larger than a regular sewing needle. I think it's an embroidery needle, to make marks all around. Kind of looks like a nautilus. Next, we're just going to try some textures. That's a fine sandpaper. Leaves just a very fine texture. You can barely see it. This is a rougher sandpaper. It's a drum that goes in a drill. This texture is very fine ridges. Kind of difficult to see again, they're so fine. You can really press the clay into almost anything. It's like a broken ceramic hand. It's a floral texture. This tool is called an awl, and it's usually used for poking holes into leather. And anything kind of pointy would work for this purpose. You know, toothpick would work, a skewer. These are the threads of a screw making another texture. I'm always interested in how the texture will warp when you bend the clay. Just a metal spoon that I had. So you can see really any kind of common object can work as a tool for sculpting clay. It's the side of the sewing needle again. So I watched a tutorial on sculpting with polymer clay, and I learned that you can stick objects into the clay before you bake it while it's still soft. Anything that is safe to go in an oven at 275 degrees can be stuck to your clay, in between layers of clay, whatever, and baked. And that could include paper, feathers, glass, fibers, thread, just as long as it won't melt or catch on fire at 275. It's a pretty low oven temperature. You still want to be careful, of course. You're making kind of a faceted ball, just with the back of the spoon, different texture. So this clay is a little bit sticky, and for me, I'm having trouble getting it to be perfectly smooth. That's okay. It doesn't need to be perfectly smooth. It's not necessarily a requirement. I think as you're working, pay attention to the texture, to the surface, to the rhythm that the surface creates for your piece. It's not about having it be perfectly smooth necessarily. So I'm going to add a stem to this apple and a leaf. I'll put a little hook in one end of a short piece of wire, and that hook will go down into the clay apple. That'll keep it from falling out once it's baked. Put a little curve into the stem. Put the hooked end down in the clay. Then I'll make a leaf from just a very tiny bit of clay. So if it weren't for the wire, the leaf really wouldn't have enough surface to attach to the apple. Anytime you want to add a little detail like this, it's a good idea to use some wire. A smaller gauge wire is better. 20 gauge would be good. So sculpting my leaf, and then I'm going to add the vein texture with the sewing needle. I've given you just some really basic sculpting techniques for polymer clay. You know, you can do so much more than what I've shown you here. This is kind of just to get you started. Of course, the next step is to bake the clay according to package directions and then finish the surface however you like.